we need to tailor the messaging on why climate change is crucial, how it is hitting each one of us, whether as an individual or a business, what are the impediments to conversion, and what is the role of technology coupled with the big data and machine learning on how can we support this transition going forward.
I can see many of our members have already joined in. So very happy to see the fraternity here. I hope you're all in good health and are keeping safe. And thank you very much for taking the time out and joining in during such a difficult time. It's such a big privilege and a pleasure to reconnect with everyone, our distinguished panelists who are handpicked because of the think input and the rich experience they bring in. And thank you to our distinguished audience for joining us. We've received over 150 registrations, most of whom are senior leaders, CEOs, CXOs. Many of them are repeat visitors to our webinars and are members of our forums. This is very encouraging and motivates us to provide even higher levels of dialogue to the online modes as well. For those of you who are new with us today, the Blue Circle is an exclusive community and ecosystem which is curated for business leaders across 6 sectors, which are energy, aerospace and defense, e-mobility, healthcare, logistics, and real estate. We also present socioeconomic insights which ultimately determine the evolving complexion of the market. In response to the COVID challenge, the Blue Circle has also accentuated its digital presence. One of the many modes we employ is our weekly webinar series and our digital publication. And in addition to this, and you'll be happy to know that we've just very recently launched the first version of the Blue Circle app, which is curated for leaders, somewhat like the sector-specific LinkedIn for senior leaders, a space that brings leaders together to have meaningful conversations, connect with each other, and house high quality curated content, and also provide access to business opportunities across our core sectors. For those leaders among you who are interested, please do join us. I will also share the link to the app in the chat and will soon be sending invitations to our new guests post our webinars. We also have begun our selective outreach and have close to 3,000 leaders who've joined the waitlist for the app. And today, as part of our marketing, advocacy, and customer acquisition series, we're privileged to have big minds and thinking leaders and leading lights of the industry to join in for our Energy Circles discussion. The topic is marketing, advocacy, and PR strategies to drive conversion to renewable energy. In the best interest of time, I will just briefly mention the names and designations of our panelists. We have with us Mr. Hemkant Limay, Senior Director, Global Marketing, LM Wind Power. Mr. Jayanta Chaudhary, Director of Marketing, Alliances and Partnership, Alliance for an Energy Efficiency Economy. Mr. Rajesh Bhatt, Managing Director, Global Marketing, FTC Solar. And the chair and moderator for the session is Mr. Pavan Chaudhary, who's also a board member and investor in Blue Circle, Chairman, Medical Technology Association of India, CEO of French multinational Vigon India, is a public intellectual, best-selling author, and is also a leading thinker across sectors, including energy and e-mobility. And I now request Mr. Chaudhary to please chair and moderate the session, sir.
Thank you very much, Siddharth. Pleasure to be with you all. And I was just thinking, as I was crossing the other day a liquor shop, it was thronging with customers. And I was reminded of this doha or this couplet, which in Hindi says that liquor is very easy to sell. People will throng to it, but milk will have to be sold door to door. You'll have to take your milk to different doorsteps to sell it. Basically, it means that what is wholesome requires a greater selling effort. And renewable energy is not different. The saving grace is this is the lot of anything new and wholesome which comes. The resistance which renewable energy faces is the resistance which was faced by coal also. When coal was overtaking wood, that time it was a greatly less polluting and greatly ecologically sensitive fuel alternative. However, it took a lot of time for coal to push out wood. And it took even more time for oil and gas, which were less polluting, more energy dense than coal, to push coal out. In fact, coal made a comeback in 1970s when the oil prices soared. So now is the turn of renewable energies. How renewable energies need to be pushed forward in terms of marketing and advocacy and PR. This is the topic of the discussion today. Renewable energy has certain disadvantages which are real, certain which are perceived. So among the real advantages or disadvantages also, they are slowly getting erased. Intermittency was a real disadvantage. However, energy storage is taking care of it. Costliness was a real disadvantage. It no longer is. So the knowledge of the publics as well as of the policymaker is not 100% in line with the advance of technology or advance of improvement in renewable energy. We need to bridge this through our marketing and communication efforts and move the lines of perception in the public as well as the policymakers' mind. What is the work which is required to do that, etc. We will come to in a moment. But before that, let me go to Rajesh and ask him, what is our target audience? Where do these lines of perception most require movement? Rajesh, which are the various stakeholders?
Good evening, friends. Good evening, leaders of the community. Thanks for having me on this webinar. Just to give you a perspective, what Pawanji said was that we have different segments who produce and use energy, right? To me, in the energy segment, you have the investors who invest into various assets, and they could be like PE funds, they could be the likes of banks and financial institutes. So that's one segment. The next segment that comes into my mind is the asset owners. So asset owners could be investing in different assets, either coal, oil and gas, hydro, or renewable. And so that's the second class of segment that you can talk of. The third segment would be once the power is generated, whether it is coal or hydro or renewable. The third segment that it goes to is the distribution companies, the companies that take this power and distribute it into various users. So I would park them in the third segment. And the fourth segment, of course, are the users. The users could be building for either for residential or commercial purposes, could be the energy users for commercial and industrial uses, could be the agriculture users. And if you see that commercial and industrial users are typically about 40 or 50% of energy that is there in India, and the rest probably about 20-25% is in the residential sector, about 18% in the agriculture sector. So these are the users of this energy, whether it is coming from coal, or whether it's coming from renewable, or whether it's coming from oil and gas. And of course, of the users also, you have users of energy, which is transportation. So that's the other segment that we need to look at. To encompass all this is the government or the policy regulators or policy makers. And that's the fifth bucket that I call as one of the segments who are to be influenced to tilt the balance in favor of renewable energy. Now, when you look at all these five segments, our attempt here is to how can we make sure that we are able to achieve this net zero by 2050, right? And once we the reason that we need to achieve net zero by 2050 are multiple. And I think as we go along in the discussion, we'll probably try and highlight. Some of you might already know it, but maybe interesting to know that also. So if you look at net zero 2050, a lot of countries have committed to it. And from an Indian perspective, I think we need to look at how marketing and PR advocacy, these 5 segments, can make a difference and increase renewable energy consumption in the market, in the area, so that we are able to reduce use of any of the energy sources that increase the carbon emission in the air. Today, unfortunately or fortunately, everybody in the globe think that Earth is a dump yard for carbon emission. And if all of us believe that it should not be treated as a dump yard for carbon emission, then the mindset is going to change. And I think as policymakers, if we are able to influence these 5 segments, our attempt to be part of that global drive to achieve net zero carbon emission by 2050 will be achieved. That would be my start.
Excellent start. You have beautifully trained the spotlight specifically on the target audience and a very granular spotlight. Investor, asset owner, distributor, user, and policymaker all need to be influenced through renewable energy conversion logic. And within the users, you have mentioned not only residential, commercial, industrial, but also transport. And you have alluded to the 2 buckets, conventional energy and renewable energy. This will also help us further home in on this topic itself. Conventional energy, as we know, is nuclear, oil, coal, and gas. We are not talking about this. We are talking about renewables, which are energies coming from wind, sun, water, and earth. Great points. And before I come to Hemkant, let me say that changing people's perceptions, attitudes, and behaviors takes considerable know-how, time, and investment. We will focus more on the know-how. So what is it that is required to change perceptions in this space? First of all, what are the obstacles we hit, Hemkant? What should be the objectives, our communication objectives for various segments? Are there any non-prudent behaviors also which we encounter? Are there any technological developments which also we should push because they, if they come to fruition, will help in the adoption of renewable energy? And how we can make corporates also more large-hearted so that they are willing to invest a little extra in renewable energy products, and what should be done in the policy space. So a lot of stuff. How would you like to flesh out this discussion further? Hemkant.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for this opportunity to be on this distinguished panel. And as Mr. Pawan and Rajesh have said in the beginning, what we are really looking at is we have a set of stakeholders that govern how the energy is produced and how it is consumed. What we want to do is to drive this transition towards a sustainable future for all. There are a lot of buzzwords that we hear in terms of climate change, energy transition, COP21, Paris, INDC, SDGs. What we need to do is to create a storyline. So going from what climate change means, what are the adverse impacts of climate change, be it extreme weather events that we see that are happening with increasing frequency and increasing ferociousness. Maybe the Bombay case or the recent freeze in Texas are good examples. So what we need to do to begin with is to bring the danger from a perceived something which is not hitting me or my business to a danger which is there next door. That is the first fundamental requirement uh, that we need to achieve, that everybody starts to feel that if they don't act now and if they're not part of the solution, it is hitting them individually as a consumer or as a human being, or I would say also as a business. So that is the first part in terms of how can we link this so-called abstract topics to something that individual companies and individuals can relate to. And there are a lot of social activism, both in terms of investor in NGO, and there are many avenues available, but we need to make it more entrenched and more real life to the common man, who can then go ahead and influence. The second part of this is having understood what climate change means to each one of us. Then we look at what is my role in this change that the society needs or the planet needs from me. And there we come across the behaviors that are driven by sometimes rational constraints and sometimes purely irrational or emotional, that is coming out of A, because of lack of knowledge, or B, could be a prejudice. If I talk about more rational behaviors or rational reasoning, uh, and look at what are the segmentation of energy usage, there are many segments, like say uh, personal and commercial transport. Personal transport is a easy low hanging fruit that we could electrify, whereas commercial vehicles is on the other spectrum, where we would need a slightly different approach on how do we change that. Similarly, there are many sectors that we call it as hard to abate sectors, whereas it's not about lack of intention, but it's about lack of available economical technologies that support them towards the energy transition. So it is, and these also are the sectors that are typically very high in energy intensity, and their load profile is such that even if they wish, converting to renewable energy is not the easiest task. So those hard to abate sectors is a rational behavior, but technological or economical gaps. Then, if you look at the behaviors that are coming out of prejudice, either political, personal, or lack of knowledge, there the conversion strategies are could be varied. Um, and there I have a strong belief that many times human beings, we ought to be given no choice but to change. Meaning, say for example, if you look at a simple appliance like a press that we all use in our home, when I was small, there was no mechanism that press, by reaching a certain temperature, it could kind of automatically stop. Today it looks like a child's play. So many times I think we need to use technology, and now couple that with artificial intelligence, machine learning, to bring that smart element where some of those decisions that we human beings need to take or don't take, for example, in terms of switching off the light or switching off the fan or regulating the temperature, they need to be taken out of our active control through a mixture of smart data and smart appliances, thereby without compromising on comfort or say what those technologies do for us, we drive this towards a more sustainable energy usage, which in long term not only saves cost but saves planet. And at the end of the day, there is no planet B, and we are all in this together. So to summarize, I will say that we need to tailor the messaging on why climate change is crucial, how it is hitting each one of us, whether as an individual or a business? What are the impediments to conversion? And what is the role of technology coupled with the big data and machine learning on how can we support this transition going forward? So with that background, I will pass it back to you, Mr. Pawan. You are on mute, sir. Yeah.
Superb. So basically, you are saying that one of the important communication objectives for any renewable energy campaign should be to make a stronger visceral connection between the danger and the concerned person. It is not some wolf in the jungle. The wolf is at your door. This is what the communication should move towards. The other point which you say regarding behaviors, the economic argument, you also said that this could also be because of lack of information. The economic argument, which is becoming stronger and stronger in favor of renewables, also should be updated, because many people may not have the patience to go through complex reports, conflicting data, etc. Then you have said that the hard to abate segments should not be our, let us say, the low hanging fruit which we move towards, but those segments where renewable energy can quickly replace conventional energy should be looked at. Then you have brought in a beautiful point regarding regarding these appliances. The press you speak about the iron to iron your clothes. When you spoke of that, I wondered whether that switch happened from the iron which had no temperature regulator thermostat to switch it off once it reached a particular temperature, because of the promotion which spoke of electricity saving nature, or because of the promotion which spoke of the preventing the burning of your clothes or preventing the fire possibility in this technological improvement. If you would ask me, I feel it might be more because of the preventing the accident nature through which this communication perhaps would have moved forward. You also said that you may have a plan B for many things, but there is no planet B. So we have to take care of this planet. And the last point which you spoke of is that there might be certain non-rational reasons why we are not in the energy conversion business or moving to more wholesome forms of energy. And you have already pointed out to some couple of very interesting examples. I'll think more and speak more about it after I've listened to Jayant. What Jayant has to say on this last piece, and anything else you would like to add, because you work in the field of energy efficiency, and which is what was the last point which Hemkant left us with. Jayant.
Thank you, Pawan. Good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to be here. So unlike Rajesh and Hemkant, I come from the demand side. And, we primarily work on energy efficiency, as we said. And probably to start with, I'll, start with a quote from the IEA's last report, saying that all road to successful global clean energy transition go via India. And, India is in a unique position to pioneer a new model for low carbon inclusive growth. And that's also, and the reason, we say that energy efficiency is as key, has a role to play as adoption of renewable energy is because, when we're talking about a net zero scenario, we clearly see from, again, the IEA and World Bank studies that the cumulative impact of energy efficiency can be to a level of some 13 gigatons of carbon emissions being avoided, which is only second to the impact of renewable energy. So it is very clear that, we don't really have a magic bullet. It has to be a combination of renewable and energy efficiency policies which will kind of lead us to the goal that Him-Kun was mentioning, whether it's the net zero or what we are going to discuss in COP26 and others. And from our perspective, we clearly say that energy efficiency is the first fuel. It's free, it's available, and it can do wonders. And so when we say that, adoption of renewable is a must, so most of the programs that we do, most of the solutions and the areas that we are working on, whether it's a research or the policy advocacy, renewable energy plays a very key and important role. But we go a step backward and say that, in India today, what's happening is if you say that I want to be green, or you say, okay, in the roof, just patch on some, solar cells. I mean, that is not the final solution that will help us reach a net zero. What we kind of believe is that, okay, by say 2040, 50% of the construction, the Indian construction, I would say the industry is going to double by 2040. And 50% of that has not yet been made. Probably more than 50% of the cars have not yet been bought. So the intervention areas are there now. And that's where we propagate something what we call the lean, mean, and green philosophy, that we believe, consumers, industries, everybody should adopt. And by when I say green, mean, and lean, green, mean, is that right at the design level. That's where you need to be lean. When you have good design constructions, you have to have the proper ventilation, you have everything in place so that the energy requirement is low. Then you go into a mean where you say that you have the most efficient appliances, smart controls in place. And then what already you have been able to bring down the energy demand significantly, then you go green. Whether it says, environmental friendly refrigerants, green renewable energy, what you put in top. So that's the lean, green, and mean philosophy that we propagate, which we say that is going to be the kind of the way that we work closely with the adoption of renewable energy to achieve this. And to the question of adoption and what Hemkant also mentioned, that what are the the consumer behavior, and there we something have something that we call the energy efficiency paradox, which kind of talks about that we believe that the public is going to be very irrational. And if you tell them that, look, this is good, LED lights, laga do, you'll save a lot of money. But the reality globally is that, when you talk about pushing renewable energy or even energy efficiency policies, it doesn't work. So, the whole fact that you think that they're very rational, they'll understand that you're saving money and it's good, it doesn't just work. And the solution to that has been kind of pushed is something what is called the social marketing approach, where we go beyond economics but to the value. And that can be different for the different set. I mean, it's self-interest, it could be social norms, common good. And again, you're dealing with different groups of people. You have the environmentally concerned people who would kind of go with probably what everything you say. Then the environmentalists, I mean, who would just adopt anything. And the third is the disinterested. I mean, do whatever you want. It's going to be the toughest push to them. But it's very clear that from all the three sectors that we talk about, whether it's a public, private, or the civil society, organization, the CSOs, like what we represent, it's very important that you kind of address all these three different audiences in very different way. I mean, right from the proposition, what is going to be the cost of changing this behavior, and that's where what we call the behavior energy efficiency also probably creeps in, which a lot of organizations today, whether it's appliance manufacturers, whether it's the utility companies, that's a lot of these organizations are now getting into this. So that's going to be critical in the way of adoption of the friendly energy efficiency technologies, adoption to renewal, and all the other new technologies that are there. And of course, I mean, we work in multiple areas where we see that there is going to be an adoption. And to what Rajesh has also mentioned in some of the areas. And again, very surprisingly, I mean, yesterday there was this release from Ministry of Energy, Renewable Energy, where Mr. R.K. Singh has said that, while the renewable energy push as far as electricity generation is happening in the line, but the focus needs to be also on energy efficiency. And again, we have the challenges in all the different sectors, whether, so thermal comfort for all, the convenience of car and lifestyle. I mean, from a consumer perspective, we feel these are three areas which are going to needs to be addressed, or targeted if you really want adoption of RE or energy efficiency to be there. And it's going to have a different kind of interest in this, because consumerism tells you that to spend more, and what we are talking about is exactly spend less. So there is a kind of a paradox over there, because of which there is always a resistance to adoption of these technologies. Yeah. Sorry, Pawan. Yeah.
Yeah, no, great. So it was interesting that you spoke about the irrationality of consumer behavior. That means rational contours are necessary, but they are not enough. He wants an emotional story also, and there might be several reasons. It has been found why people waste. For example, the French people waste food because it is seen to be as too down market for finishing everything on your plate. I have noticed that this kind of a thing might also be associated in wastage of energy, where it might be seen as too old-fashioned to turn off every appliance which you are not using. So that was a great point, and we will revisit this with Hemkant as to how we can overcome such irrational behaviors, because it has been done in the past in many countries or around many topics or services. The second point which you brought was similar to what Hemkant was saying, but a different angle, that you need to precipitate the need for them to switch now. Hemkant said, tell them, wolf is not in the jungle, wolf is at your door. You said that even at design stage, you need to incorporate renewable energy templates, because if you do not do that now, 10 years from now, whatever road which you have taken might actually end in a blind alley. And you also spoke about thermal comfort for all, which is also a great objective to have, and it can become available more easily if we focus at what you said. You said money saved is money earned. Energy not used is energy earned. And that's how you reduce the carbon footprint by consuming less. Great point, Jayant. Let me go back to Rajesh. Rajesh, you have mentioned the 5 target audiences. Now, can you please highlight as to what should be the communication objective which we should adopt for each of these audiences? Maybe one objective for each of these audiences based on your understanding of where they are in the conversion stage for renewable energy. So, and whatever comes to your mind, very well. Otherwise, we will go to Hemkant after you have finished to help us get his take on all these 5 audiences, where they are in the purchase cycle for or conversion cycle for renewable energy, and how we can expedite it through our communication messaging. The 5 target audiences you mentioned were investors, asset owners, distributors, users, and policymakers. What are your top of the mind where they are?
Perfect. So before I get to where they are from a perspective of mindset change, one of the messaging that whether we need to put them with all those 5 segments, or whether we need to put it with individual segment is something that I'll come to in a while. But I think what just to add to what Hemkant and Jayant were saying, fear is one of the major thing, right? You said wolf is not far away, it's not in the jungle, it's at your doorstep. Sometimes fear is one of the major tool people use to keep things at a reasonable level. So just to give you an example, the we lose approximately about 20 lakh people because of respiratory problems in India. And now you may say, hey, what's that? How does that impact? You lose 20 lakh people, and because you lose them over a period of time, people are not appreciative of the change that the carbon emission is having an impact on individuals. The loss that is estimated is something like about $95 billion because of this respiratory problems. Now, is this messaging good enough? If you look at last 1.5 years, it's very unfortunate that we have COVID. We have had approximately 3.8 lakh deaths, right? It's very unfortunate. But at the end of the day, the amount of messaging or amount of fear psychosis that has created in the minds of people in the last 1.5 years, because you're very close to death. Whereas the 20 lakh people that you see dying every year because of respiratory issues are never in the open. Now, fear is one of the things that drives people to change their behavior at the end of the day. That's one aspect. Second, like people said, economic benefits, right? So if I look at the segment, in addition to the fear, the other thing that you could look at is let's look at the investors. Today, investors can decide whether I need to invest in a oil rig or should I invest on a renewable energy platform. Now, if he invests on an oil rig, probably the losses are very high, so he shies away. The recent example is ExxonMobil, where the shareholder said, I think it's not worth investing in oil installations, let's do something else. And so there is a shift by which shareholders are putting pressure on investors where they should invest. So the economic benefit plays an important role. The second area where the second segment which we talked about is the asset owners. In asset owners, what happens is that the asset owner is looking at building the asset, and if asset owners are driven to saying that if you use renewable energy, and that's what the REC mechanism is trying to address, which is under draft stage now, which I think the government has just given out a couple of days back, where they're saying that if you adopt renewable energy more, we will compensate you and do something better for you. And so by REC, so the REC certificate. So there's an economic benefit that is being given to asset owners to make a shift from, let's say, conventional energy to renewable energy. The third segment, we talked about the distribution companies who distribute this energy that is coming to them. In the distribution segment, what happens is that I take power from the generators or asset owners, and I distribute whether it is oil or gas. I mean, the form could be different. It could be running a generator, or it could be used for a diesel generator and multiple uses, right? And in the renewable energy, you evacuate it to the grid, and then you have multiple users there. Unfortunately, in our country, that is the area where the distribution companies have something like 1.7 lakh crore worth of losses. And so I believe to make them part of our ecosystem, they could be combined with the asset owners, so that at the end of the day, it is one entity that is trying to deliver energy rather than two different entities. This is one thought that I have. Again, economic benefit plays a role there. The consumer is a very interesting entity. Now, if you look at the agriculture segment, which is one of the consumers, you're burning diesel and trying to grow, let's say, all the crops. At the end of the day, assuming that you are burning diesel and you have a greenhouse emission, your entire climate pattern is changing, and it's been seen it's changing, right? During the COVID, we had almost 19% less emission, and Delhi was very, very clean. Bangalore was very clean. I mean, that's a fact of matter. Now, interestingly, those consumers, if they're again economic benefit, which means that let's assume today some of the government spend as high as 10,000 crores to give free electricity to farmers. Now, can we create a model where, let's say, we put solar pumps to all of this? Government is trying to put 1 million pump and then trying to move to 10 million pump. That's the plan, right? So if you use, instead of diesel, entities can use solar pumps to make sure that they're going green, is one of the things that we can think of. You can also give them incentives, like if you use green energy and sell your products, let's say for a steel company or for a cement company, if you sell products from green energy use and not from carbon emitted equipments, then probably get a better price, is an incentive that the users community can look at. And the last bucket, of course, I said the policymakers have done a reasonably good job, but since we are looking at trying to reduce the temperatures by 1.5 degrees in time to come, and since we are on accelerated energy transition mode, I think it is very important that today what we have both in the renewable space of about 90 gigawatt out of the 385 gigawatt installed, we need to look at how can we go to probably 450 gigawatt, which the government has plans by 2030. And if that happens, I think we are on a very good footprint to convert and make sure that the carbon footprint is low. And there are enough incentives for all these 5 segments to make sure they're able to position themselves well. We're not against use of coal or oil or gas, because that's going to stay for some more time. But what you got to do is you got to make sure that the emitted carbon from that is either stored or pumped back into the ground so that it's not emitted into the air. So the impact of all that is almost zero, and thereby we achieve this messaging of IEA, which says let's try be net carbon zero by 2050.
Very good. So basically, you're saying two things. You're saying there will be two drivers of this change, or our communication should drive on these two engines, fear or greed. Fear will have broad appeal, and we have to make, and Hemkant also started with this, we have to make the fear palpable. And I was reminded of the communication of an anti-diarrheal called Gramoneg, which came into the market at 10 times the price of the current anti-diarrheals. And it was a magic product, but it did not sell at all. And then people realized, the communicators realized, that we have to make the diarrhea more serious in the minds of the doctor. And they came out with a campaign saying, which was backed by WHO and other Lancet, etc., that diarrhea is the #1 killer of babies. Diarrhea is the #1 killer. 20 lakh deaths happen every quarter because of diarrhea. Let your prescription reflect your concern. Prescribe Gramoneg. And it took off because the fear was made very real. Wolf at the door. And on the greed part, you spoke about investors, how they should see some good return on investment. Asset owners also. Distributors, you say right now they are the Titanic. And you are advising that they should be tied to the asset owners. I hope both of them do not sing together. But this is also a point to consider. And of course, their interest has to be kept in mind, how return on investment can become at least break even for them, if not profit immediately. And the consumer also should get some incentives for switching. And also those technologies, which made me think when you said, those technologies which are kind of performance based, like G-Wind technology, it pays on improved performance of the wind farm. I mean, if the wind farm performance will improve by 5%, then you have to pay for the installation of the technology. This kind of technologies also may move the incentive needle in favor of renewables. Hemkant, let us stay on these 5 segments. And what else would you like to add to what Rajesh has said? And Jayant, then I will come to you on this. And I'm sure you have some points to make, which I can very well imagine where you're coming from. Hemkant.
Yeah, I think Rajesh has tried to sort of put a structure on why these segments will change or will not change. I will talk a little bit about how social activism is making a change. I think both at the investor community, where socially responsible investing is forcing companies across the sectors to behave differently. So increasing number of companies are using their CSR funds to support transition to renewable energy. And I think there are ways to improve the effectiveness of that deployment. Third thing is, as you rightly said, the big elephant in the room, of course, is distribution companies. But there, I think government have good intentions on shifting some of the burden back to generators. From so thinking about the renewable generation obligation on top of the renewable purchase obligation that the obligated entities have today, I think. But the right way is to combine the pain, or combine this transition, let me not say burden, the, let's say, roles and responsibilities adequately between generators and distributors. And then I see on the consumer side, that is the most positive story. We have seen in many countries that consumers are actually turning prosumers. There is the areas where there is a tremendous uptake of rooftop solar or other technologies where consumers are producing their energy. We have read some stories, some renowned case studies where people have completely gone off grid. So prosumers is an increasing phenomena, and they will they do it not only because it is good for the environment, or that suits the philosophy, or in what we call it as the say-do ratio, but in long term it suits them economically, because even seen from a distribution company, can you in reality really hedge coal for 25 years? But today you have, when you sign a PPA for 25 years, the asset owners, the generators, the IPPs are willing to stick to that under those PPA norms. So that is a very strong position that consumers will at some point of time, both individual consumers, but also industries will start to move the needle. The RE100 initiatives, or many initiatives where companies decide to turn net producers of green energy or net users of 100% renewable energy, is a trend that we will see only accelerating. And then I would say, I second what Rajesh said, that regulators and policymakers have done a phenomenal job. First, in setting a very ambitious target. The extent of ambition is awesome. What we now need to see is that ambition getting executed in a way that works in a federal structure like India. So where central government and state governments will have to work together on many of the enabling policies that either eliminate or at least reduce the burden of both regulatory compliance, but also policies that will foster a faster adoption towards renewable energy. And I think the communication will follow this trend, or the trend will follow the communication. It's like a chicken and egg story. There, I think we see a very positive trend of social activism, NGOs doing their bit. So I think, in a way, let me say that the revolution has already started. I hope that it only intensifies, and where people work with each other. I think so. There is a very nice word called co-optation. So it's not competition alone. It's kind of a collaboration and competition where even within the sector, let wind, solar find their own space on the grid and in the consumer's mind. Because at the end of the day, we need an energy basket which is sustainable from a cost perspective, but also from a net zero and particularly to India, the INDC ambitions that we have put forward. So I think, let's say that the transition, the revolution has started. I think with concerned efforts on communication, technology, policy working together, that triad will make this transition faster and smoother. So Jayant,
Great. Great. So you have brought in another point regarding incentivization. Incentivization can also be brought by predictability of the contract, where you have said hedging of coal. So if you can hedge coal, or you can get a PPA which is relevant for 25 years, you have that much of greater incentive to invest in this space. You've also said that RE100, this kind of movements are going to grow. I also agree, because perhaps the large companies are already realizing that a threat to the planet is a threat to themselves. Then the federal structure also, the coherence between not only policy between the state and center, but also communication objectives between the state and center should not be at cross purposes to each other. This will also bring a better adoption. And you have said that the revolution has already started, and that is what we are talking about. How can 1,000 revolutions bloom with artful communication experts like you stepping in to make sure that these start blooming or start intensifying? Great points, Hemkant.
yeah, I just want to add one kind of comment, saying that at the end of the day, we always like to say that the answer, my friend, lies in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind.
That is Bob Dylan, if I remember correctly, and what a
Yes.
beautiful song it is. And perhaps that is your sales pitch also, but done so beautifully and so aptly and in such a timely manner. So I fully agree. Perhaps the answer might just be blowing in the wind. Jayant, coming to you, and thereafter I'll take one or two questions. I've got some questions on my WhatsApp, but I will surely want to take one question from here, which is so apt. Yeah, he has really posed that question. In fact, let me say to you, Hemkant, where rather I'm just reading it out so that you're prepared to answer it. One Radha Krishna Mundoli is asking this question. One of the issues we have been facing when proposals are put to potential customers is the tendency to postpone decision expecting reduction of cost. What do you suggest we do to overcome this? He's looking for a communication strategy to overcome this, maybe person to person or as an advertising strategy. So Jayant, what would you like to add to the dialogue?
So, I mean, of course, as Rajesh and Hemant said, I really wouldn't touch upon, let's say, the investors or the asset owners or discoms. I mean, there's, of course, a lot of discussions that happen. And as he said, there's a very positive regulatory framework right now, which is promoting renewable energy. So I like to maybe focus a little bit on the consumers. And if you really see the energy consumer, almost 75% of the energy is consumed, let's say, by the residential and that sector. And to me, I think what is going to make the real difference in the adoption of RE, let's say, other than just sheer generation and say industrial usage, like maybe hydrogen is the preferred choice, let's say, for heavy vehicles, like both Daimler Benz and Volvo have decided to adopt hydrogen fuel going forward and not e-mobility. So leaving that bit aside, so from a consumer, and you're really talking about not only the larger cities but the smaller ones. I mean, to be very real, I mean, if you go to these not so rich communities, they're not going to buy, rooftop solar. They're not going to buy electric vehicles or go to install smart meters. So I think, that's where the role of the state government and, the other facilitators come in. So how do we actually get this large, bucket of people into the renewable energy foray? And we clearly believe that in this, the state has to play a very important role, not only to kind of identify the communities, and this has to be done at the community level, that, where do we replace fossil fuel? They identify specific providers. And third, bulk purchase. I mean, whether it's through CSL, ESL, I mean, we have a lot of success stories and who go about doing that. And that's going to bring, say, the first level of, say, change at the consumer level. Also, when we're talking about, say, the different user scenario of the consumers, and when we say, the energy usage, and there, from a design perspective, as I was mentioning, when you're actually designing properly and you have a renewable energy solution right on top, that is not only happening in the residential sector very effectively, but let's say going forward, I mean, there is a whole burst of cold storages, and especially in the first mile that is happening, and most of them are in V-grid or off-grid areas, which is going to be powered by solar. But that is an area which needs to be promoted, which has also got an implication on the livelihood. You're talking about appliances. So I mean, they're going to be the guzzlers, and again, air conditioning is something supposed to, or cooling per se, is going to probably grow 7 to 9 times till 2040 in India. Now, how do you really control that? I mean, one is of course from through the power side, but from energy efficiency, having the more efficient appliances. And there is a whole push that evaporative coolings and other technology and even basic fans are way more energy efficient compared to, say, room air conditioners and others, as far as cooling is concerned. So when we talk about adoption of energy efficiency, or where RE can play a role, electric vehicle for that matter, I mean, whether there's a charging that's going to happen. We work more on the infrastructure side, where the renewable energy also has a very important role, especially the solar power. But the advantage of that is that you can actually, technology now allows you under the V2G guidelines, that you can actually allow that excess generation that is there to go back into the grid and run buildings and manage office and other complexes. So what we see from a consumer side, these are going to be some use cases that's going to drive the adoption of renewable energy and I would say the energy efficient policies. But it's very important that everybody works together. I can give you an example, like in Palma, Brazil. I mean, the government is encouraging people to have solutions at home, and they can actually sell the additional generation back to the grid, and they get some 80% discount on municipal taxes. So if that is the case, and those are the way to incentivize people to adopt that at an individual level. We're talking about, multiple, $600 million being spent in Mexico to set up a solar city, where, the government is prioritizing upskilling by clean tech jobs and everything else that comes in. That's where private sector, civil society organizations, everybody come into the play and help the adoption of RE and other policies in the market. So that is one area that we believe will actually bring about the major changes.
I agree with you. I also feel that renewable energy communication coming from renewable energy providers should also speak about energy efficiency. It will make their bona fides more solid. That means that they will not only seem as people who are trying to substitute conventional energy with renewable energy, but also people who are really trying to reduce the carbon footprint by reducing the overall consumption of energy. Very good point. Coming to Hemkant, and then I will close with Rajesh, and let me tell you what are the points which are open right now. First is that question, Hemkant, if we can answer that. And thereafter, how can renewable energy communication counter the misinformation which is there also? Some of that misinformation may surely be spontaneous, and some may be coming also because of vested interests. So how can that misinformation countering can happen, and how can the other question be answered which I have posed to you? And then I come to Rajesh Bhatt to speak about any point which is left, plus how can corporates be made more large-hearted to spend a little extra, and any examples if he has of such corporates. Go ahead, Hemkant.
Yeah, so this question comes from my old friend Radhakrishnan. So I'm very pleased to hear this from his side. I think there is no bad time to do a good thing. So similarly, if you are on a cost curve, which is where you have a view you can never be sure whether something will go lower or something will go higher. So the way we approach is this: we say that we are in a certain cost trajectory. So if you look at, okay, we have a project that will span maybe 12-18 months, and then we say, okay, these are the regulatory upside downside that could be hitting the cost, and then we take a view on whether the project looks good or not. And cost, of course, then there are sensitivity analysis, assumption on what may happen, and that can never bring an answer which is 100% sure all the time. Rather, what I recommend is to look at that cost point, are you creating enough value for your company and for your customer? Because at the end of the day, customer, apart from cost, is actually looking at the value. So even if 2 years later, say the cost of equipment goes down, the contractual obligation cannot be changed. So contractual obligation is paramount, and contractual obligation should be set in on the time the contract is entered into and the value that it creates under the given assumptions. And if we keep everything floating that way, then we will never buy anything or we'll never sell anything. So in a way, to sort of say that, look at the value that you create for your customer. If there is enough value, the cost rational, the cost can always move up and down. What if the cost goes up tomorrow? You are not going to be able to sort of say, okay, now today this equipment costs more. I gave you something cheaper 2 years ago, so I get compensated. That doesn't happen that way, right? I think I would focus more on value that is there for your company as a seller, but more so, what is the value that you are providing to your customer? If there is value in the deal, we believe that customer more than often takes the deal.
Very good point. And perhaps it can also be substantiated by the near certain bets of falling of technology prices in the energy space, whether it was coal or oil, which actually rose while it was expected to surely fall. Great point. And coming to the misinformation, how should misinformation against renewables, whether accidental or intentional, be handled by renewable energy companies?
I think there is a great amount of structured information available through industry associations, whether it is global, regional, local. We have seen enough coordinated efforts from the entire renewable energy value chain to come together in providing the information which is factually correct in terms of what renewable energy adoption does to the country. So there are many great websites available. If you look at US, for example, it is the classic case of how misinformation or vested interest take just one point and then blow out of proportion. And then there are countermeasures taken by associations like American Clean Power Association. There are many such associations, they step in. So I would say that rather than an individual knee-jerk reaction, I think there is a systemic way available where renewable energy value chains, whether abroad or India, they are well organized into trade body associations. You can say like-minded groups that provide factually correct information, and that is the only way to sort of deal with it now, because something that you hear over a period of time, and unless it is countered, it majority of the population will start believing that in absence of an alternate narrative, then that becomes the truth. So that we don't see that happening anymore. I think there are strong and vigilant groups available that are pro renewable energy, but they also state, I must say, to their congratulating them that what they put is mostly factual, and again talking about a balanced view of the energy basket going forward. Nobody is saying today that use only intermittent sources, and if it is not there, that's not our problem. You will never see that kind of feedback coming in from any of the responsible industry associations. So let me say that there are groups available, so do look out for them and keep them in your list.
Great. So basically, you're saying it's like what you have during COVID. We have noticed the Center for Disease Control in America, a
Yeah.
very reliable body, or John Hopkins University, a very reliable spokesperson of authenticated facts. And that is the kind of thing which we have already in the renewable energy space. And more importantly, you're saying that if you do not counter a narrative which is false, then after some time it may become the governing narrative.
Yeah.
So you are encouraging all those people who can compellingly, with convincing arguments, come in favor of, come against fake news, to do so. Great points.
And I would just conclude by saying that the website of companies like GE or anybody in that space, they have fantastic knowledge repositories available. So people, before making a hasty impression, should take out some time to go to these authentic sources, as you said, check fact for themselves, and then make up their mind.
So you are saying that the answers are not only blowing in the wind, they are blowing at reliable websites on the net.
Yes.
Great, great point. So coming to Rajesh, to close this, anything you'd like to add? And finally, tell us, are there any corporates which are showing large-heartedness to invest in a little more expensive version of renewable energy products?
So I just want to add to what Hemkant said about Mr. Mundeli's question. And one of the things that we have to understand is if you don't do your task today, it's an opportunity lost. Hemkant spoke about the contract and other things, but in addition to that, it's an opportunity lost. So let's say today electricity is being sold at 6, 7, or 8 rupees in the market, and if renewable energy is able to sell it at 4 or 5 rupees, somebody is saving 4 rupees, and that definitely transfers to the product. Today, we know that renewable energy is the lowest cost. The question that Radhakrishna is asking is, it probably yesterday was 3 rupees, today it is 350, tomorrow it's 4. So how does the consumer or the customer decide? And I agree with Hemkant that it is the value that you provide to the customer and value that you get for yourself as a company. And opportunity lost is opportunity lost. You cannot make up for the lost time. And if you lost 2 years, 2 years of energy that you have lost in a reliable cost of energy is gone. And so that would be my answer to Mr. Radhakrishna. The second point that I would like to add is corporates are doing a lot. So there are these large corporates who are profit-making corporates, and they are in their books when they say, "Hey, I want to invest a couple of % of my profits into renewable energy activities." They abide by that because then investors are very much aligned to it. Assuming you are selling to markets like Europe, which is very pro reduction in carbon footprint. But that is where if your product is being sold in those markets, you got to make sure that your product also uses renewable energy. And if it uses renewable energy, they're willing to pay you a couple of % more. The open forum, wouldn't like to quote a company, but there are lots of steel companies doing this, and they're trying to sell green steel, and some companies are selling even in cement. That is happening. And so we can take you from corporates can take you from this activity, and if the markets are in the markets where the renewable energy is being appreciated, then you get a better value for the product you sell. Same thing is happening with clothes. If your clothes is made from the energy source of renewable energy, you get a better price, get better adoption and acceptance in the.
Yeah, and also this is happening more, to answer one of other question which Radhakrishnan has asked. It is happening more in those societies which are already affluent and have a strong sense of concern for the society. So great points, and the point which you said, ki the opportunity should be taken today and not left for tomorrow, allows me to close this discussion on a Doha. When I started, I could not remember that one. Now that I'm closing, I remember another. Kal kare so aaj kare so ab. Pal mein pralay ho jayega, bahuri karega kab. However, that is on a lighter note. The deeper answer to Radhakrishnan's points have already been made. And finally, what I feel is that what this group has brought about is the realization that anything which is wholesome also needs some people to market it, some people to sell it. As they say, खुशबुओं को फैलने का शौक है मगर मुमकिन नहीं हवाओं से रिश्ता किए बगैर. So you, all of you, proved to be the wind beneath the wings. We are referring to the wind again and again. The wind beneath the wings
With the light.
for renewable energy conversion. On that note, let me close the discussion and pass it back to Siddharth. And thank the audience also for great questions, and the panel for extremely spotlighted focus on marketing, advocacy, and PR for renewable energy conversion. Siddharth.
Thank you very much, sirs. Such an insightful and engaging conversation, and a privilege to hear you all. Our leaders and I have taken home a lot from today's conversation, and I wish we had some more time. And thank you to our leaders in the audience for joining in and for staying till the end and for always sharing excellent questions. For the questions that have not been addressed due to paucity of time, I will share the relevant ones with the leaders on the panel and request some of their time for it. We will also try to post the answers in the community app as well. So along with our weekly webinars and our publication, we're taking these discussions and conversations onto our exclusive community app, which is curated for senior leaders across 6 sectors that are energy, e-mobility, real estate, logistics, healthcare, aerospace, and defense. So whether you would like to engage with us on our platform, leaders are invited to join the Energy Circle and also get access to the other allied industry circles. I've also shared the app link in the chat box and will be emailing the leaders in the audience shortly. So thank you very much, sirs, once again. We look forward to having more such discussions in the future, and please do stay safe.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe. Thank you.